Hi, I'm Chris Odell, and I worked at the Haven I believe I came in 2010, and I was there for till 2012. I was a therapist. I had my own private practice prior to that and worked at both Sierra, Tucson, and Cottonwood treatment centers. So I'd been doing it for 20 years when I came to work for the Haven. And Margaret Higgins, who was the director at that time, she wanted to open a for-profit. And that meant getting insurance coverage and being able to do self-pay. She already had a house set up called Casa de Palmas, and she asked me if I would be the director there and run Casa de Palmas, which was all women. Kind of got acclimated. It was small. I can't remember exactly how many women, but probably no more than 8 at any time. And they would live there, and we would do groups every day. We had regular programs for them set up and ran it just like a treatment center would be, only on a much smaller basis. We were diagonally across the street from Linda Ronstadt's house, and I knew Linda. She was a good friend, and she came into town from California and invited me over, and I went over and we were talking, and I told her what I was doing across the street with Casa de Palmas, and she said, "Would you like to rent my house? I'm going to rent it out." And I'm like, wow, yes, we would definitely like to rent her house. Her house was beautiful, had lots of land around it. It was just a really wonderful environment for women to stay and to meet each other and to work on their sobriety. It was so great to watch it. The people who worked for me were amazing. The techs, the technicians who were there every day and 24 hours a day and took care of the women pretty much were just so loyal. And all women, we were totally women. And Sherry Underwood, who actually was helping me as an assistant, she was unbelievably good, taking care of the patients, dealing with the women, and eventually she really got so good at it that I gave it to her. And I decided at some point in 12 that I was going to resign and not do therapy anymore. When we moved out of Casa de Palmas, it left an empty house basically. And Margaret had the idea of doing men. And it just so happened that my husband was a therapist and did really well with men. So he came into Casa de Palmas and he ran the men's program. And they were much more difficult than the women. That's all I can say. And so he was running the men's and I was running the women. And it was really amazing that there were people. I mean, at one point we almost got Whitney Houston in. It came very close to actually bringing her. I can say that because she's no longer here. But we were busy. We were full all the time. There was a feeling of family more than anything there. The girls, the women got very close. The staff was really close. It was very family oriented. And I think actually in all the years that I worked in treatment, it was probably the most conducive and healthy environment for women getting into recovery. There was always something going on. I would bring in outside people to teach meditation. I think we did yoga like 2 or 3 times a week. They would get, I did have, it was very interesting that I did have a Native American girl come in, and I don't think she wanted to be there. I don't think she wanted to get clean. But it was so interesting because she felt out, like she wasn't part of the family, and she was difficult to get close to. Eventually, she did, and people started speaking. She was able to say how angry she was, basically, at the way that Native Americans were treated, and I think that ability to be able to do that and have everyone kind of understanding and being interested in where she was coming from really made her feel safe. I think that alcohol was obviously one of the big ones, but there was also cocaine, kind of the more standard. We weren't dealing with fentanyl at that time, so that didn't come up. And really, it was kind of your pot, marijuana, the cocaine, the alcohol were pretty much the overall themes. Although you'd get someone who had a pill addiction too occasionally. So, but it was nothing hardcore. Heroin would have been very difficult to deal with in that environment unless they were already clean and off of the heroin, and then they could come in. Oh, it was so rewarding because even though I'd been working with alcohol and drug treatment for quite a while, there was something about working in that small space and having that more casual, easygoing feeling, and not in a really nice place. That does make a difference. The women feel they're important because they're at Linda Ronstadt's house, number one, but also the house was really nice. And I think that was really helpful for a lot of them. You know, I was able to bring some music therapy. We always need music, I've discovered. Um, so we had lots of music around. And we would have guests come in. Well, Linda would come. Whenever she was in town, she'd come over and see the ladies and hang out for a while. So that was really exciting for them too. And one time, my friend Patty Boyd was in town, and I took her there. So every so often, they got a very special visitor, and it kind of lit them up for about a week, and then they forgot about it. I got sober in 1988. I was in the music business, so that was kind of what we did. We toured, we did drugs. It was part of what kept us going, I think. So I really was a big imbiber, so to speak. And in 1988, I had my son in 86, and I went, this isn't the kind of mother I planned on being. I was sleeping until late. I had no pair. I lived in England. I had no pair that got up with him, and I went like, this is not what I imagined it would be. And I had him late. I had him when I was 39. So I decided then and there that that was it. I couldn't be that person anymore. So I quit drinking, I quit smoking, I quit using drugs all on the same day, and was introduced to AA through my friend Astrid Lundstrom. And that was, I think that just made a huge difference. And we moved back to LA, my husband, or not back, but moved to LA, my husband and I really got involved in the LA recovery scene. And then coming here, I kind of took it, I decided, well, I'm going to help other people. And once I got into the field, I started at Sierra Tucson. Once I got into it, I really enjoyed what we were doing for people. And when I finally got my master's degree, I loved working with the women. I had a lot of women's groups, and I got the adolescent, or the not adolescent, young adult women, which were even more exciting to work with. So that's sort of how I did it. And then after working at Cottonwood Treatment Center, I started a private practice. And that was great. I loved doing it. But then this also was around 2008, 2009, when the recession sort of hit and things were not, people didn't have the money anymore to do a lot of that. So that's the time Margaret came and said, would you like to work at the Haven? And it was so perfect because I just wanted a steady income at that point. When I first went to work for the Beatles in London and got to be friendly with them, and then George Harrison invited me to live at his home for a while, without telling his wife he was bringing me home, I realized very quickly that if I wanted to stay involved with these lovely people that I had met in London, I should hang with the women because I could be friends for a lifetime with the women, but I might not with the men. So that started me really noticing how women acted and what kind of a role they took. So I think in a lot of ways, I don't want to say that I'm a feminist because I don't know if I really am, but I grew up with my grandmother and my mother, who both were very strong women. And they wouldn't have known that they were kind of breaking glass ceilings at that time, but they were. I remember my mom said, well, you'll never know unless you jump off the cliff and take a chance. And so that had a lot to do with it. But women have been pretty much a constant theme for me. In those days, we thought our drugs were really strong. And because I don't do them, I don't know that they're really that much stronger, but people tell me that. They're saying that it's amazing how strong these drugs are now. I think it would have killed me, to be honest. Oh, here's the other thing. I am recognizing that since marijuana is now legal, not only in this state, but other states, there are a lot of families getting high together, and I mean, they're not sitting there all getting high, but the parents were old hippies and they got high, and now the kids are all getting high. I'm seeing more of that than ever. It was probably well hidden back then, but it's not so hidden anymore. To be honest, I think I'd rather see people getting high on marijuana than driving drunk or being drunk. I mean, I don't find alcohol should be banned, actually. I mean, that's never going to happen, but in a way, I feel like that's true. That this is, I'd rather see someone kind of mellow in the corner than see somebody jumping all over the place. However, I find that through these years in my lifespan, what was illegal and we had to hide all the time back then, you can do going down the street. And it's kind of surprising to me that it's evolved into that. So, do I have a really strong feeling about the legalization? No. I have no statistics on how that's changed the other drug use in our society. I really don't know. In a way, drugs are the way that people are dealing with their fear, their disappointment, their confusion, their insecurities, their depression. I mean, drugs are what people reach out for as a medicinal way of dealing with it. That was true for me, that it was a way for me to escape the ugliness that I would see around me. I saw this when I lived in Bali. I saw this when I lived in Thailand. Their compounds, especially in Bali, families stay together. You don't see homeless people on the street because the families are there to protect each other, and that you always know you're going to be okay. And we, as a nation, we have moved over my lifetime further and further away from our families. So we're creating other families, which is a good thing, but you lose that family orientation and fitting in somewhere. We went through a whole stage of therapy. I remember I was working in the field then of me, take care of me. And at the time it sounded really good, but actually it's not really good because, again, it moves into that selfish, self-centered way of thinking. And all of those things, I think people will pick up a drug and start going, oh, I feel better now, or I can socialize now. How many times do we hear that? Just need a drink or two and then I can go out and socialize. I also discovered, in my theory, is that a lot of alcoholics, drug addicts are really sensitive people, creative people. They are insecure. And again, the drugs can boost it for them depending on which drug they go to. So you can see a lot about a person by what drug they choose. I am really happy to see how much the Haven has grown and that it's continuing to do really good work. It's been here for years, and I mean, when I was here, working here in 2011, there was one office in this building, and an outpatient. Now it's spread here, and I haven't been to the actual Haven in quite a while. But these were a little harder women. They lived a harder life, and they were lucky to have the Haven because it's the only place they could have found where they could have lived and gotten clean and sober. So yeah, I'd be very interested to see what it's like today. Makes such a difference that you can wake up and look out the window and see some yard, or just the room's nice and feels good. That makes a huge difference. And sadly, that isn't the case for a lot of the rehabs because they can't afford it. That's one thing. We were for profit, and the Haven is a nonprofit, so that does put a little bit more stress on it. But yeah, I think the environment makes a huge difference. Plants, um, anything to just flowers, anything that just feels kind of homier. It's home. I really think that it gets forgotten what a big part of the community the Haven is. You can go for periods of time where you don't hear about the Haven. It is part of our community, a big part of our community, and has been for a very long time. And for women, bless you, Haven. I think people who are able to help out organizations through donation or through services, um, are, even if they're not in recovery, are actually contributing to the welfare of our city, of our women, and actually of our human race, because drugs and alcohol, they're not going away. But to help people come out of it, their lives change dramatically. Somebody who has been using drugs for years and years, and they're sober for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is to begin with, your whole world changes. You just see everything differently. And you hear people go, wow, everything's just so nice since I'm not using drugs and I'm clean and I'm sober. And I hear from women who are still clean and sober and grateful for what they were able to do. And I hear from people who worked with these women who are really grateful they had the opportunity. And, I mean, it's long term, so they then have to work at that. So, but I think starting right where the action is, where it happens, where people make that change, I think it's a privilege for people to be able to help and support financially and volunteer wise to the Haven, especially.